request to terminate the parental rights of David Sensor to his singular minor child, in this case, NR. Let's confirm by way of appearances one more time who's here today.
Lee Heiss, lawyer, guardian ad litem.
Good morning, Your Honor. William Amadeo, P76194 for the department. Next to Ms. Heiss is my worker, Hannah Housley. Hannah, please state your name for Judge Sala.
Hannah Halsey.
Morning, Honor. Ariel Berger here on behalf of Mr. Sensor.
David Michael Real Sensor.
Thank you. All right. As all of our attorneys are well-versed in our proceedings, all of the review hearings up to this point are relevant for purposes of today, but it also means that continuing record does not have to be revisited. So this proceeding will be conducted as a review hearing, but also in terms of making my final decision on the petition for termination of parental rights, I will be considering all of our prior proceedings. Are there any objections or any concerns about that before we get started?
I have nothing, Honor. Thank you.
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
We'll, once again, we're consolidating the review with the termination trial for purposes of testimony. I look forward to your report, Ms. Heiss.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have been on this case since it came into, since it was first petitioned. This child is in care of a foster family at this time. So at this point, the point of review, I'd like you to consider that she has her needs met. She is in an environment, it has changed in October, I believe, of 2022 from fictive kin to she is now reunited with her brother. A scene that I observed that I think is indicative of a lot for this child is this. There is a play area in the foster home. I was observing through Zoom, as this is an out-of-county placement. This is what I observed. This child is older than her sibling, and there was a lot of developmentally appropriate toys out on like a landing, and it's indicative that the adult was sitting in a comfortable spot. It implies that he has developed this area as a place where he spends a lot of time. The children had developmentally appropriate toys. This child, NR, was playing with a puzzle. Her work was respected. The adult was guiding her, suggesting that maybe a flat piece belonged on the edge, however, was not taking the piece and doing it for the child, allowing her to play and develop. There became a conflict when there was a cowboy hat that was bright pink. And this is a gift that had been given to this child by her extended foster family. The little boy has a sheriff cowboy hat. So they're both pretty cool cowboy hats, but the little boy got the pink one. And in some families, the older child would bop the younger one on the head and take her hat, or she would become so dysregulated because it is her hat that this little guy had on. If you've ever seen Cute, this was so cute. But this child, NR, stood still, felt her feelings, was allowed to have the feelings of, darn it, I didn't get that hat first, or that's my hat. So the adult was right there. And the adult, this NR knew some tools. So she went and got a really other great toy and tried to trade this little fella. No, he wasn't going to do it. So she went and got his sheriff hat. He wasn't going to do it. So she's been trained to use these tools. Then she was, the adult stood up for her and said, little guy, would you give her her pink hat? And he said no. And he was respected for his decision. So as it went on, the older child, NR, is developmentally able to walk away and show patience. She played with something else until the little guy put the pink hat down. Then she was able to go get the pink hat and put it on herself. There's so much involved in this, so much. The little girl, the older child, is later to this placement than the little boy. He came right when he was an infant, and he has always been in this family. So as the guardian ad litem for both children, I'm watching the little girl who was raised in a different family, different rules, different expectations, different stimulation, and watching. And what you might expect is to see that the little guy is favored and that he gets what he wants because he'll cry or he'll be upset. That is not what I observed. These children are in daycare during the day, and it must be that the daycare is consistent with the home because these children know that how to use tools. They know that they aren't going to resort to physical aggression to get what they want. They know that they're allowed to have their feelings. Very safe environment for children, very developmentally appropriate. Now, there are 2 adults in the home, so the other adult was home down making dinner, so that this other adult was observing the children. So eyes are on these children 24/7. That's not true, they sleep. The thing I'd like to say about their sleep is this: they are on a structure, and they know what the structure is, and they expect a bath after bed, and they expect that they have to get out of the bath at a certain time. It's not an open-ended playtime. They also have swim lessons. Now this child has gone through swim lessons, and she's repeated so many times that there just isn't another lesson available till she's a certain age. So this family is providing extracurricular activities for this child. But when it's bedtime, the adults in the family have worked all day. They've done the morning routine, worked all day, and now they have had this very engaging time where the children eat dinner at the table. They eat healthy food, it's home cooked, and then the children play with an adult and expect interaction, and then they bathe, and then they go to bed. And then the adults, it's very important that the adults have self-care time, and it's probably the littlest slice of their life, but they do take care of themselves and their relationships so that they're able to parent this family with joy. This child is flourishing in this environment and is bonded. What happens when all these needs are provided for a child is that they become bonded with those adults who are providing it. So what I'd like to say, though, about this father that we're here for today, he didn't know at birth. He didn't know when I met the child. He didn't know that this was his child. So when you have a child, you have a lot of constitutional rights. You also have duties. We don't hold Mr. Spencer accountable for his legal duties until we have an adjudication on him. Although, after the DNA test is when my interest peaks. So here we are with this little child is now 3 years old and has bonded with the folks who have provided for her. So then we look and we say, but this biological father is motivated to take care of his own daughter, his 3-year-old, and we know that there's a parent-parental bond, and when that bond is positive, and when the parent provides for the child's needs, it can be a better environment for a child than a non-relative caregiver. And we look at this person, Mr. Spencer, who has some employment at this time. He is living in a multi-generational home, which can be a very positive asset for children, but it has to be an environment where Mr. Spencer is acting as an adult, not where he's still acting as a child, meaning that he's not contributing to the household. He's not primarily taking care of himself. So I would ask you to consider that the duty owed to this child began in adjudication, and that the period of time that we've waited now for Mr. Spencer to ask about the size of training pants and the size of clothes and the size of shoes, that has come lately, but there is a duty to parent your child, and can we tell NR that she's safe to go home, that they're to go to her father's home and to develop there? I don't think there's an indication in the court report that, and in the reviews that we've had so far, that we know that it's safe and that there isn't a risk of harm to her emotional, her educational well-being, her medical well-being. We don't have any indications that that's a safe place for her. So today is the day, if we could wait till she's 10, maybe Mr. Spencer would have some of those assets available to him. But at this time, the progress has been absolutely minimal. And we don't know that she would be safe in this environment. And at this point, and only at this point, can we compare what she stands to, how she stands to develop in her foster home, who is available for permanence to her, and what we can know about Mr. Spencer's environment, which is not a lot. And we can compare those two. So at this time, it's my recommendation that we continue, you find that Mr. Spencer has not made sufficient progress to delay permanence for this child, and that it's in her best interest that we continue to the second phase of termination today. Thank you.
Mr. Amadeo?
Thank you, Your Honor. We call Hannah Housley to the stand. What's your position, Hannah?
I am the direct foster care worker in this case.
And how long have you been in that position?
I think I've been on this case, probably since July. I started with the agency back in June.
Okay. Was this one of your first cases?
Yes, it was.
Would it be fair to say you know more about this case than anybody else?
Yes, that would be correct.
What's the current permanency goal for NR?
It's adoption.
Let's discuss David Sensor. Is he the respondent father?
Yes, he is.
Has Mr. Sensor rectified the barriers that caused NR to come to your care?
No, he is not.
Do you feel the minor child is in need of having Mr. Sensor in her life?
At this time, I do not.
What have you witnessed as far as mental and physical well-being of David Sensor as it pertains to NR?
So as far as, are you asking as far as like Mr. Sensor's mental health, or are you asking?
Well, going through the best interest factors, is the child emotionally connected to Mr. Sensor?
I would say no. She's had approximately, I'd say like 3 visitations with him through therapeutic parenting time.
Based on what you've witnessed, does he have the capacity to give her the love and affection and guidance that the placement's giving her?
I would say no.
Is he willing to encourage a close relationship like the emplacement has?
I do not think so.
Can you explain what services you offer to him and discuss his level of
Yeah.
compliance?
Yes, so we have offered him the therapeutic parenting time, which he was partially compliant with that, but it has since been suspended. We've offered him like voluntary services. We've offered him to go to parenting education and mental health services, and he has not engaged in those services.
Do you believe NR would be at substantial risk of harm if she was returned to Mr. Sensor today?
Yes, I do.
What do you think the harm would be based on your experience in this case?
Based upon that, I mean, just his interaction and the bond with her, and also via what I've been told, with the few parenting sessions he had with her, he just wasn't able to have those basic parenting skills.
Did you hear Ms. Heiss's report earlier today?
Yes, I did.
Based on what Judge Sala needs to rule, do you concur with her report?
Yes, I do.
Okay, is Mr. Sensor facing criminal charges in Kent County?
Yes, he is.
What would those charges be?
So I included that in the report. If I could look at that real quick, I do know it's like a 4th offense. He's a habitual offender. I think that it was for domestic violence, and it was great bodily harm with less intent than murder.
So would you agree that he's facing 1 count of assault with intent to commit great bodily harm less than murder by strangulation?
Yes.
Would you also agree he's facing a domestic violence charge?
Yes.
And to your knowledge, is he a habitual 4th offender?
Yes.
And is it true that a habitual 4th offender can face life in prison?
I believe so.
What are you recommending today for NR?
I basically recommend I follow Lee's recommendation, and I ask that we follow adoption.
Okay, and why are you recommending that, to be clear for the record?
So she has been reunified with her sibling. They share a really strong bond. She shares a very strong bond with her current placement. They are meeting all of her needs. She goes, to doctor's appointments, dental appointments. She's been in swimming lessons, soccer. Basically, all of her needs are met there.
You kind of answered this, but let's also be clear for the record. Has the placement exercised reasonable care for this child?
Yes, they have.
Are there any additional needs you think the child needs right now?
I don't think so. I think they're meeting them all.
And is it accurate that the child and the sibling are actually united?
Yes, they are.
Would breaking that bond hurt the child?
I believe so. They are very well bonded from what I've witnessed. They love to be around each other. When one leaves the room, the other's looking for the other one. So they're very much in tune with each other, and they very much look for one another when they're not around each other.
Is there anything else you would like to add for Judge Sala today?
I do not believe so.
Your Honor, I have no further questions this time. I'd ask the court report and supporting documents that were presented to the court be admitted to the record.
Ms. Halsey, what specific voluntary services were offered to Mr. Sensor?
So Mr. Sensor was given parenting education services, and he was also given mental health services information. Because he is in Kent County, we did look those services out for them and provide to him those. And I've reached out multiple times to those providers as well for him.
Okay, and what parenting education service did you set up for him, or did you refer him to?
So I believe that was through Family Futures there in Kent County. I called them and talked to them. I actually filled out like a referral online after they had told us that he could either get online and do it or go in person. However, nothing ever came of that. So I filled the referral out myself because I found out I was able to do that. I talked to a staff member there multiple times. And then eventually I just got an email, I'd say like a few days ago, that they had reached out to him. I want to say they probably forwarded the same email. It sounded like they were directly talking to him, and they provided him multiple services. I believe one was like something through MSU. I can't remember the other two. I think there was like Alpha something of Grand Rapids. So they provided him multiple resources as well. However, he had told me that he has something to begin maybe like next week online when I spoke to him yesterday.
Okay, and the resources that were provided, were those classes, or were they other people to call, or what were those?
I believe that they were probably, it might have been classes, it might have been people to call. I know there were numbers and like links and things. And then he said he took like a test online. He said it was on mentalhealth.org. And he said it had to do with parenting. I'm not sure. I think he said he emailed documentation.
Okay, email that to you.
I believe so, but I had not received it yet, but I think he did send it to my supervisor today.
And Mr. Sensor did attend some parenting time, is that correct?
Yes, he previously has.
And was that set up due to an error through the agency?
I believe that we were told that parenting time was suspended, and we did set that up.
I'm sorry?
I said, I believe that one of the last hearings, we were told that it was suspended, and we had set that up because we weren't, I guess it wasn't very clear that it was suspended.
Okay, so it was suspended, however, he did have 3 visits through the agency?
Yes, they were through Renee Moore's office. We had her supervise them.
And were they suspended from the onset of this case?
Like at the beginning of the case, are you asking? I don't believe they were suspended right at the beginning. Like I said, we weren't really even aware that they were suspended.
And were the reports from Ms. Moore related to his parenting time negative or positive?
So I think that they had some negative and some positive both in them. However, I think that there was more bad than good.
And could that be explained because Mr. Sensor had only ever visited with his child 3 times?
I would say based on their reports, it was more like parenting skill wise.
And you stated that there were mental health services offered to Mr. Sensor, is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
What specific services were offered?
So we provided him the information again. I want to say it was with like Hope Network. And I had reached out to them on multiple occasions as well, because when we had originally reached out, they said Mr. Sensor was responsible for reaching out to them and setting up his own services. We let Mr. Sensor know that on multiple occasions. And then when I reached out again, I finally got a hold of a coordinator, called me back and said that Mr. Sensor would need to go to CMH and do an intake. So I then found CMH's info and I provided that info to him, and he had not set that intake up.
And do you know if Mr. Sensor is currently employed?
To my knowledge, he sent a pay stub, and I want to say it was probably dated like 3/31. So that's the last I have from him.
Okay, and that would have been last week's pay stub, correct?
I believe so.
Okay, so he is employed.
As far as that pay stub, yes, but I can't say he's employed today because I don't have anything besides that pay stub.
Okay,
I mean, things change.
okay. And what about housing?
Mr. Sensor has reported that he still resides with his mother.
Okay, and is that housing appropriate?
I have not assessed it. It's been assessed by licensing.
Okay, and did they approve or deny the home?
They denied it
And do you know why?
because Mr. Sensor resides in the home with his mother.
Okay, and was that the only reason?
I would have to look back at that report, but I think that was the sole reason.
And Mr. Sensor was made a respondent fairly late in the game, is that correct?
I'd probably have to look back at when he was made the respondent. I can't quite remember the date of when that was.
It was not when the children originally came into care, is that correct?
No,
And was paternity established prior to him becoming a respondent parent?
I believe they did a DNA test.
So yes.
I'm not sure when that was completed. I'd have to look back at the documentation for that.
And to the best of your knowledge, are you aware if Mr. Sensor has ever done anything actively to put his child in danger or harm them?
His child hasn't been in his care.
So is that a no?
His child hasn't been in his care, so I guess I don't know how to answer that since she hasn't been in his care.
Has he ever harmed her?
Not to my knowledge, but she hasn't been in his care.
He did have parenting time though.
Yes, he did, but that was supervised in a therapeutic setting.
Are you aware if Mr. Sensor has any other children?
I am not.
And how old is this child again?
She's 3.
And she obviously is quite young, but has she expressed anything to you related to Mr. Sensor?
No, she does not realize who Mr. Sensor is, and via those parenting times, she would just call him David. As reported, she doesn't realize that that's her father.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Ms. Heiss.
Yes. After Mr. Sensor was determined to be the biological father and then he was deemed to be the legal father, did he move at one point in time to be closer to the child?
I believe someone had mentioned that maybe he did.
At this point, he's living, how many hours away would you say?
I think Grand Rapids is like over, I want to say it's probably almost 2 hours.
Okay, and the child is even an hour further away than that, is that true?
I think so. They're in Monroe County. I think it's probably about an hour and a half or something like that.
Okay, so there is no bond between this child and this parent at this time, is that correct?
That's correct.
And then regarding this child, she has known her brother since he was born, is that true?
She's known her brother since he was born?
Yes,
No, they were not placed together since she's been born.
but she went and saw him when he was born and knew him to be her brother, right?
I don't have knowledge of that. I probably wasn't on the case at that time, so I don't have knowledge of that.
Have the siblings had contact monthly since there were siblings?
Yes, they've had visitations.
This child moved placements, not this review period, but in about October, is that right?
Yes, it is.
And so with respect to her needs, would you anticipate another move to Mr. Sensor's home would be healthy for her or destructive to her?
I think that it would be very destructive to her.
In what way?
I just think that she has a bond with the foster parents and she has a strong bond with her brother. Like I said, when they're in the, or like when one leaves the room, the other's looking for the other one. So I think that they're very well bonded. She has a lot of structure there. Her needs are met. And I don't foresee if she is moved on to Mr. Sensor's home, I don't foresee that being in the future for her.
Okay, and the last move that she went through, you were on the case when she was moved.
Yes, I was.
And she did not continue a relationship with the prior placement, correct?
She did for a while, and then it was gauged based on appropriateness, and then I think it kind of over time had stopped.
Okay, and then Mr. Sensor, can you give us examples of, in your time with him, his problem-solving abilities?
I mean, I would say not very well. He doesn't follow through with things. I mean, there's very minimal communication unless I communicate.
Okay, do you have a police report from his current charges?
I do not. It's like a thing that Kent County had me print off. I believe it's like a ROA.
But you don't have the allegations of what behavior he had?
I do not. I mean, it was directly reported to me by the person that it happened to, but that's all I have knowledge of.
And what did that person tell you? What are the nature of the charge?
Are you asking just like what the charge says, or are you asking me to give you details what that person told me happened?
I would like to know if you know anything about the incident that arose that he's charged with at this time.
So the incident was between Mr. Sensor and his previous significant other. I guess it happened at her house. I was told by her that they had a no contact order, but they weren't following it because it wasn't addressed properly somehow.
Your Honor, I'm going to object. I believe that these charges happened prior to my client becoming a respondent. Therefore, the rules of evidence would apply and that would be hearsay.
I don't disagree. I'll move on. Do you have any information in the time that you've worked with Mr. Sensor regarding his parenting ability? I know we have the supervised visits, but what else have you gained about his parenting skills?
So mostly it was just those interactions based that were therapeutic. I haven't really seen any interaction other than when I've been there, like I've gone to Brene Moore's to like meet him to sign papers or something. I mean, I just saw him kind of like come in and like say hi to the child, but I haven't really been there to supervise that interaction.
Okay, and then what domestic violence services has Mr. Sensor partaken in that we have evidence of?
He is not.
Do you know if he's on probation or parole anywhere?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you. Do you believe that the present placement is available for permanence for NR?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Just one question, Your Honor. Ms. Halsey, were domestic violence services offered to Mr. Sensor?
So Mr. Sensor was referred to like counseling, and like that was supposed to address multiple avenues, and that was talked about. However, he never followed through with those services.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seat. Any other witnesses, Mr. Amadeo?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Yep, Your Honor, I would call Mr. Sensor.
Come on up to our witness stand, Mr.
You've
Sensor.
heard the testimony of the caseworker today, is that correct?
Yes, I have.
And you've heard her testimony at the previous hearings?
Yes, I have.
Is there anything specific that you would like to talk about in relation to those testimony?
I just wanted to say, my lawyer for my current case never informed me that I was a habitual fourth offender. I was never told that I was facing life or anything like that. You said the most I would get would be 3 years. I'm planning on taking it to trial, and me and my lawyer both strongly believe that, with the jury trial and stuff, that I'll be proven innocent in that case.
And what case are you referring to?
The current case that is active in Kent County.
Okay. And you heard the caseworker testify that you have not participated in any mental health treatment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And have you participated in any sort of mental health counseling or therapy?
I have not. I'm more than willing to set that up, and I'm working on setting that up. I haven't been really told what kind of services they requested. I did do an online mental health evaluation and said that nothing was wrong.
And did you ever engage with CMH?
What's CMH again?
Community mental health.
No, I did not. But the phone number that Hannah provided me, I called them, and they said that they are only for people who are suicidal.
Okay. And did you try to reach out to any other counselors in your area?
I have not.
And have you engaged in any parenting classes?
I'm starting doing parenting classes online and using some of the resources that Hannah sent me. One of the websites is through Michigan State University, and they're sending me newsletters and information about parenting education and youth education and things along that line.
Okay, and have you started those classes?
They're just newsletters. So like there's information that you read, I guess.
Are you starting any actual parenting classes or anything like that?
I'm in the process of setting those up, and I'm hoping to start those next week.
And you're currently employed, is that correct?
That is correct.
And where are you employed at?
Aluminum Fabrication Corporation, that is in Kent County. The only reason why I haven't been able to provide a pay stub for this week is I would have got that pay stub today, and instead of being at work, I took the day off to be here.
I understand, okay. And have you provided any financial support for your child during the pendency of this case?
No, but I'm more than willing to provide financial support. Things just been a little tight right now. I had COVID a few weeks ago and missed out a week of work.
Okay. And have you asked about providing things for your child?
Yes, I have, and I'm planning on getting her some stuff. I just haven't. I've been a little behind with car insurance and helping my mother out. I pay her $200 a month to help with rent and groceries and food.
Okay, so
I'm sorry, a week, not a month.
okay, so your housing, that is with your mother, correct?
That is correct.
And you contribute $200 a week, you said?
Yes, I do.
And does that cover anything specifically, or does she just use that to help run the home?
Just to help run the home, help pay rent, help with her bills and food and things like that, electricity.
Why are you asking the court not to terminate your parental rights today?
I just feel like it's my responsibility as a father to, I know I haven't been the best in the past, but I keep on trying to be better, and, I will be better as time goes on. And, I just want to be a dad to my daughter, and I feel like it's in her best interest for her to be with her family. And, my family's really close, and, she's got cousins and a great grandpa and grandma still, and a whole family that she'll never get to meet or be with if I don't continue fighting for her.
Is there anything else that you want to tell the court today?
No.
Is your home currently set up for your daughter?
It's not currently set up just because the way things are going, it doesn't sound like anybody's on their side is really for me. It's kind of feel like they're just against me. But it wouldn't take much to set things up for her.
Is there a bedroom there for her?
Yes.
Have you purchased any, anything for that bedroom, or is that something that you would be able to do?
That was something that I would do once if I get rights to where I would go and get that stuff before she came into my care. You know, my mom would help me out with, you know, I'm not the most skilled parent, obviously, as Hannah pointed out, but my mother would help me out with, you know, getting whatever she needed, like helping me with directions, you know, and like on what kind of things she would need and that sort of thing.
And have you ever hurt your child?
No, I've never hurt a child at all, especially not my own.
Do you have any other children?
I do not.
Is there anything else you want to share today?
Not that I can think of.
I don't have any other questions for you, but some of the other attorneys may, okay?
Okay.
Mr. Amadeo.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Censor. When were you deemed the legal father of NR? Do you remember?
I do not remember the exact date. I didn't bring that paperwork with me today. I have it on file in my filing. I just don't have that on me. I don't remember it off the top of my head.
Okay. Since you've been deemed the legal father of the child, how much financial support have you provided to the child?
I haven't provided any just because I wasn't sure how.
So that'd be none?
That's correct.
Okay. When were you allowed to start visitation with your child?
I'm not exactly sure the dates, but shortly after visitation, the judge suspended them.
Okay. If I told you December 12th of 2022, would you think that's an accurate date?
Like I said, I'm just like not exactly sure on the dates, so I don't want to say anything or say that I'm sure.
Okay. How about this? Since you were able to visit with your child, how many times have you?
I think Hannah was correct in saying about 3, maybe 4 times, and they're about an hour visit each time.
Do you feel you know a lot about your child?
I know a lot about what she's been through. You know, I've talked to Lexi's mom, and I know some people that have been around that situation, and I've heard things through the grapevine and that sort of thing.
How much have you done on your own to learn about your child?
I've done quite a bit. I've talked to Lexi's mother, the maternal mother, quite a bit about family heritage and things like that.
So you feel you've done your research to learn about your child. Is that accurate?
I do.
What size is she? You know what size clothing she is, Mr. Censor?
I do not know off the top of my head, but I do have that information on my phone.
Do you know what her favorite food is?
I do not.
You know what her birthday is?
Not off the top of my head.
You don't know your daughter's birthday off the top of your head? Is that what you just testified to?
Yes.
Okay. Let's talk about your criminal case. Who's your criminal attorney?
Robert Dixon.
Did Mr. Dixon explain to you what your criminal scoring guidelines are?
He has not.
Did he explain to you what a habitual fourth offender is?
He has not. He didn't say I was a habitual fourth offender.
So to be clear, sir, is it true that you've seen your daughter maybe 3 or 4 times since December of 2022? You do not know what size clothing she wears, what her favorite food is, or her birthday. Is that all accurate?
Yes, that is accurate.
And do you have any idea how bonded she is with her sibling or not?
I do not.
And did you testify earlier that your lawyer said the worst you're looking at is 3 years in prison?
That is correct.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
With respect to preparing yourself to be the parent for this child, what can you tell me about the development of a 3-year-old? What would you expect her to know to do?
Just talk a little bit, and I heard she's potty trained already, and probably just play with toys and starting to learn how to read, and I know she's in swim lessons, so I guess starting to swim.
Have you prepared yourself on any information regarding trauma and its impacts on a child?
I have not.
Do you think she's been through some trauma from, that stuff that you heard?
I know she's been through trauma through what I've heard.
Do you think you're prepared to parent her?
I do.
And you know nothing about trauma?
I know about trauma in my own life and my own experiences, and I know how to deal with trauma in a loving and caring way.
The mental health evaluation that you took online, was it based on the information you put in? Gave you a result?
Yes.
What is the offense date for which you're charged? When did that incident allegedly occur?
What incident are you referring to? The one in Kentwood?
Yes.
That was about a week before Christmas of last year.
2022? No, 2021.
22, this is 23, so last year would have been 22.
So like 6 months ago? Was the incident date when it,
That is correct, about a week before 22's Christmas.
okay, and you were charged with great bodily harm less than murder?
That is correct.
And the charge goes on to say by strangulation, doesn't it?
That is correct.
And what is your next court date?
That would be next month on the 9th at 1 a.m. Or I'm sorry, 1 p.m.
Very good. Is that a pre-trial, do you know?
I believe it is a pre-trial.
Do you have any doubts whether this is your biological child?
I do not have any doubts.
Because you took a DNA test, right?
Correct.
Is there any reason you'd want another DNA test?
No, there was an error when I was trying to fill out paperwork. I was trying to fill out paperwork to get parental rights, and it's hard to communicate with people downstairs, and I filled out the wrong paperwork and sent it to the zone.
Okay, so you're convinced that you're the biological father of this child?
Yes.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Redirect?
Not at this time, Your Honor, thank you.
Any recross based on Ms. Heiss's questions, Mr. Amadeo?
No, thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you for your testimony. You may return to your seat.
Thank you.
Comments in closing then, Mr. Amadeo?
Thank you, Your Honor. We are asking for termination. It's very clear these children are actually together and bonded and doing well with the placement. When we make such a request, we turn to the best interest factors. We look if there's any emotional connection. Let's talk about that briefly. This man has provided no financial support in a year. He's seen the children 3 to 4 times. He's potentially 3 hours away. By his own admission, he could be facing 3 years in prison. He didn't even remember her birthday. There's no connection here. Please keep these children where they belong and grant us a termination. Thank you.
Comments, Ms. Berger?
Thank you, Your Honor. At this time, obviously, my client is asking for more time, and he's asking for an official case service plan. There was voluntary services offered to him. I kind of hand wrote him an unofficial case service plan on things that I would recommend that he complete. But at this time, he's asking for more guidance with those, more communication with the agency, and the opportunity for him to learn those parenting skills. It wouldn't make sense that a person who is not aware that they have a child would not have parenting skills until they are presented with the opportunity to do so. In addition, any evidence related to parenting time or parenting time being suspended or not attending, I think needs to be given the proper weight. At the time parenting time was offered, technically it was suspended. Obviously, we're not going to asked the court to show cause the agency for not following an order because it benefited my client. However, it did open the child up to realizing that there is another parental figure in her life that she is now not able to explore. So at this time, we are asking for more time. We're asking for an official case service plan and for Mr. Spencer for it not to be terminated. Thank you.
Your Honor, I have no further closing.
Thank you. All right, at this time, we're going to take a brief recess. And then we'll come back and I'll give you my findings. For the record today, and were necessary in evaluating the request for termination and the grounds for termination in this file, specifically the abandonment the abandonment piece of the statute that was requested for me to review. We do have all of our parties and attorneys back together. But also, we were scheduled for a review hearing, I believe, today. And so the findings for that are that the department and the agency have satisfied their obligations to provide reasonable services towards the goal of adoption and in the alternate reunification, which includes continuing monitoring Mr. Sensor's voluntary progress and the child as well. So thank you for doing all of that, and to Ms. Heiss as well for satisfying her obligations to the child.
Thank you.
The goal of adoption has been in place for some time for this child. She's been in care for a very significant period of time. She was removed from the care of her mother October 14th, 2020. So at the time that Mr. Sensor was established, the legal father, which was March 4th of 2022, the child had already been in care for 2 years almost. So, or at least a year and a half. So it was very important that we engage with Mr. Sensor right away. Given this child's age and her need for permanency and what she had been through that brought her up to that point, it was paramount that Mr. Sensor engage immediately, and cooperate with investigation and introductory parenting testing. That was monitored over the course of several regular review periods since the mother was already under the jurisdiction of the court, and the efforts to engage Mr. Sensor in the process of seeking placement and cooperating with investigation for placement and seeking custody of the child was monitored by the court over and during the period of time associated with regular reviews for the mother. This particular request for termination is made essentially at initial adjudication for Mr. Sensor, which means the court has to look at legally admissible pieces of evidence for purposes of adjudication and in evaluating a disposition request for termination at initial disposition. We had a lot of testimony today that did reconfirm some of the things that have happened. I also did warn everyone that I was looking at the complete record, which was important because I want to answer the question as to whether or not Mr. Sensor was given the opportunity to seek placement, to cooperate with investigation into placement, and the things that a parent should have the right to when you have a child, when you discover you have a child in foster care. So I've looked at that evidence, and I do see that there is clear and convincing evidence under MCL 712A.2B1 and 2 that Mr. Sensor was not providing care and custody for the child at the time the petition for jurisdiction, adjudication, and disposition was filed. He had not been working towards creating an environment that she could live in, and therefore, which was the justification and the continued reasoning why the child was in foster care at the time the petition was filed. Mr. Sensor arrived on the scene officially on March 4th, 2022, when he appeared for a putative father hearing. He was recognized as the legal parent, and the court ordered an investigation for placement and a referral to introductory therapeutic parenting time, all on the same day, March 4th, 2022. 2 months later, on May 5th, the court discovered through investigation on the record that the home investigation had not been completed. Mr. Censor indicated that he had not received the paperwork. We set a specific date and time on the record, in fact, that day. This was before your time, Ms. Halsey, for a home investigation to try to clear up the confusion about whether or not the paperwork had been properly sent, whether or not, whatever the confusion was. That didn't work. And there were some rescheduling concluded. At the review hearing on May 25th, there still had been no meeting, but the orders had reflected that the therapeutic introductory parenting time continued to be available to Mr. Censor. He had intermittent contact with the caseworker between March 4th and May 25th, and even through August 17th, which was the next regularly scheduled review, he still had not successfully allowed investigation into where he was living, and he had in fact moved into a different location. At that 8/17/22 review, he still had the opportunity to visit with the child and to engage in introductory therapeutic parenting time, but he had not exercised that opportunity. September 13th, 2022, the supplemental petition alleging abandonment and proper adjudication was filed. And it wasn't until that point that Mr. Censor determined that it was something he did want to do to engage in parenting time. So it was actually after the petition was filed and at the next review in December that we discovered that he had had a couple of visits with Ms. Brene Moore, and she had recognized some deficiencies in his parenting abilities, which he recognized today on the record, indicating that he needed some skill building, as Ms. Brene Moore had recognized it at that point. That was despite the fact that parenting time had been suspended in October, simply because we hadn't had any appearance from Mr. Censor in any real way. The only contact we had from him was intermittently because a caseworker had reached out to him to try to engage him. So between March 4th and the filing of the petition, we had not only 90 days during which Mr. Censor was unavailable, but frankly, over 6 months. Meanwhile, the child remained in foster care placement and was eventually relocated to be reunited with a sibling who she's obviously very close with. We heard testimony about that today. So for purposes of adjudication, there is certainly the failure to secure proper care and custody of this child, the failure to provide an environment where she could reside safely as a result of a parent who simply was disengaged. So I have no doubt that Mr. Censor has affectionate feelings towards his child. However, we would have needed him to step in right away and take advantage of the opportunity to develop a relationship with his daughter, develop those parenting skills that he needed, and address some of those other things that he recognized for us today that needed to be done in order for him to be a parent to this child. So the court, on the basis of that information, does find that there's clear and convincing evidence that Mr. Censor did abandon his child for a period of at least not 90 days, where he failed to seek proper care and custody. And I don't find that his intermittent efforts at visitation, wherein, by the way, he was late to at least one of them, canceled, rescheduled one of them, and demonstrated deficiencies, is enough to overcome that initial 9 months wherein he had demonstrated zero interest in cooperation or parenting. The department was correct in filing a mandatory petition under MCL 722.638(1)(a)(1), as at that time, certainly more than 3 months had elapsed since Mr. Censor was made legal father, and he had effectively abandoned his child, as I previously recognized. So I do find that this child would be at a risk of harm if she were to be returned to the care and custody of her father. He was not able to form a relationship with her or demonstrate that he was able to care for her, and had effectively abandoned her for a very significant period of time. Therefore, I do find that termination is appropriate under subsection J, and also the subsection wherein abandonment is addressed as well. So we have clear and convincing evidence on at least two of those points. So adjudication, as well as consideration of termination. The grounds for termination have been established. The dispositional phase, I'm sort of combining them, frankly, at this point, because I don't feel that it's necessary to go through the analysis twice. If you all have any questions, please make sure you ask them at the end of my analysis. But for purposes of adjudication and termination, because it's a mandatory petition and the facts are the same for adjudication as they are for termination, I find it appropriate to note that my facts and circumstances support by clear and convincing evidence was admitted during today's hearing. So the clear and convincing evidence is in effect for both adjudication and the first stage of the disposition request, which is for termination. As it relates to the best interest factors, of course, the first thing the court has to consider is the bond and the relationship between the parent and the child, which was effectively abandoned for a very significant period of time. And again, the singular visits that took place after that did not provide the opportunity for Mr. Sensor to move forward at that point. This child does not have a bond with him. He has not expressed an interest in discovering some of the very natural and basic things, as Mr. Amadeo pointed out, that a parent would look at when you would want an effective parent-child bond. Basic things like date of birth, what size she's wearing, what she might like to eat. So again, I have no doubt that Mr. Sensor has affectionate feelings towards his child, but as it relates to any real interest in parenting time, that's reflected in the lack of bond between this child and parent, which is as a direct result of Mr. Sensor's failure to involve himself for at least 6 months after he was established the legal father. The termination is supported by Ms. Halsey, our caseworker, as well as by Ms. Heiss for many very articulate reasons that she shared with us earlier today. This child is extremely bonded with her brother and is in an excellent home that advantages her both because of the bond with her sibling, but also because of the opportunities for developmental growth in a very healthy parenting setting, which was pointed out also by Ms. Heiss, which is in, again, direct opposition to Mr. Sensor's admissions today that he certainly needs education around parenting. There's really no expert background reading in trauma. Now, this child doesn't have special needs, thank goodness, has not had to be evaluated for trauma assessment or anything else, and appears to be doing well. Nevertheless, that does not discount what she's been through and the necessary education around engaging in a parent-child relationship with a child who has a background like this child. The remaining best interest factors that the court would consider, we don't have a relative placement here, so we wouldn't have that to consider. There was relative search done in this case. The family members that Mr. Sensor requested were explored for placement and were denied. Granted, at that point, this child had been in care for a significant period of time, but nevertheless, the relative placement exploration was done in this case. This child is young, she needs stability and permanency, and that outweighs what we can ask her to do in waiting for her father to continue his education and to allow him the opportunity to attempt to undergo services, which I can appreciate, but it's too late. And based on what I have seen in the 6 months of abandonment when we first discovered that he was the father of this child, I cannot find that there's any reasonable time that we could see that would outweigh this child's need for stability and permanency moving forward in a very healthy home with a sibling that she is bonded to. She's too young necessarily to express her preferences, But by all accounts, she's very happy and doing well where she is, again, with her brother. So for all those reasons, the court finds that there is clear and convincing evidence for adjudication, for termination, and that there is a preponderance of the evidence that it is in the best interest of NR to terminate Mr. David Sensor's parental rights and commit her to the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services for adoption or other similar placement. Record will, or the order will further reflect the specific statutory basis for termination, as well as the fact that no further efforts towards reunification or to prevent removal will be considered. Mr. Sensor, you'll have the opportunity to appeal this. You'll have 21 days to do that, so please take advantage of that if you wish to. If you wish to wait for a copy of the order terminating parental rights today, you're welcome to do that. We'll have that out shortly. We'll schedule a review. This file for progress on the adoption. Of course, what the child is committed to the Department of Health and Human Services under the supervision of the department and whatever agency is assigned for adoption effective today. So we'll circulate that hearing date in a few minutes as well. Unless there's any questions, that's all for today.
Thank you.